Hallo, herzlich willkommen.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are here for the Netherlands have voted from the representation of Hessen in Brussels. The Dutch people decided 2 days ago, since yesterday we have the results. The old one might be also the new president, Mr. Rutte, with his Liberal Party for Democracy, got most of the seats in parliament. It was expected. And probably he had a bonus, even if he did several things that didn't go too well. But from a European point of view, it's also very good that the parties that are in favor of Europe won a lot, and now we are talking about the coalition building. 17 of the parties made it into parliament. It's the most divided parliament in Europe because we don't have a 5% hurdle. And can we therefore have a strong coalition? And very important for us, does this change anything in our European view? We will discuss it here online. We can't do elsewhere anything else. And Mr. Weinmeister will now speak from North Hessen. We can't hear Mr. Weinmeister. Ladies and gentlemen, you have seen it. We have probably sound problems, and we try to solve everything in order to listen to Mr. Weinmeister. And you can also take part in our discussion. You can send us questions, streamline at lv-brussel.hessen.de. Please write Brussels with UE, and you can see it on our screen. And obviously you can call us 0032 for Belgium, then 472 0301 472 0301 81. So either with the email or with the phone, you can give us your questions. I will give this then to our partners here. We will talk with a Dutch journalist who has accompanied the elections in his country. We have also simultaneous interpretation. You can also follow in English and then come back to German. Now, the question is, do we have a chance to talk with Mr. Weinmeister? Well, a solution should be coming, and I would say before we can have this connection with Mr. Weinmeister, we just start right now with our event.
Tijn Sadée is one of our most distinctive voices here in the EU bubble. He's a Dutch journalist. He's working for Dutch National Radio from NOS, and he's writing articles as an editor for many newspapers, but most importantly for the Handelsblad. He followed the developments in his hometown closely in the last weeks, and of course also the elections, and will now give an overview over the results of the elections, and afterwards we will analyze these a little closer. So Tijn, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think I have to start with stating that what we saw happening Wednesday evening was, in the first seconds, sort of a surprise. I think to a lot of people, even to me, journalists, we saw the surprise of two parties, D66, the Progressive Liberal Party, and a very small newcomer, the Pan-European Volt. They were the only two parties that dared to use the word European Union while campaigning. The other ones left it like an elephant in the room. And look at the results. D66, with this message, with this pro-European message, was the big winner, and Volt, the newcomer, came in with 3 seats. So that is maybe the biggest surprise, especially if you look at the big win of Sigrid Kaag, the female leader of this progressive liberals, D66. But then, do we really witness a genuine, a real surprise? Maybe not. Especially if we look a bit closer, and then I'll already show you the results. I hope you can know, where are we? Give me 1 minute. And the overview. Here you have the results. If you first don't look at it now, but if you think about all the scandals of the last couple of years, we will come to that later, all the shortcomings, and especially the outrage of the Dutch people, and that you saw on the television, the outrage on the streets against the corona policy, then you would have thought, well, the results will be a big surprise. But no, although these Dutch voters were very unsatisfied, it looks like they forgot to punish their politicians. In general, the Dutch are very liberal. It is still this country of, as we say, the koopmannen, the Netherlands of the entrepreneurs, the kaufmänner. Let's now have a look more close at these results. There you see, for example, first of all, of course, the VVD, the Liberal Party of Prime Minister Mark Rutte. He had this little gain, Gudrun mentioned it already. There is, of course, this crisis prime minister bonus, so he won even a little. He went to 35 from 32. But then, again, this surprise, the Green, D66 we call it, Democrats founded in 1966, a big win, 5 seats extra. It is because of, people say, the straight and honest message of Sigrid Kaag. But then comes a problem. Where did she get all these votes from? She sort of raped and plundered the green left bloc. And that is to say, P van de A, you see them, the orange, 9 seats. This is the classical Labour Party. Think of GL, Groen Links, the Groene. And then red one under SP, the Socialist Party. These 3 parties are the big losers of these elections. That's an historical failure of these parties, because this bloc, the 3 of them together, they only have 25 votes. And then another surprise, you might say, is the populist right. Then you have to look on the right side for me. PVV, Geert Wilders, you all know him, the blonde man. Forum for Democracy, FVD in the scheme. And then Ja 21. Ja 21, there still is a number 4, but it went to 3. Ja 21 is a splinter. They used to be part of the Forum for Democracy of Thierry Baudet. We will come to discuss him later. But if you sum up these populist right parties, you come to something like 28, maybe 29. The last votes are still not counted, but 29 out of 150 in total in the parliament. That means that 1 out of 5 Dutch voters support populist right, and that means they support the anti-corona policy, anti-lockdown, and then more in general, they support their anti-EU message. Well, let me try to make some conclusions and see how we can go from here. I mean, we, the Dutch politicians. Again, this outrage, this dissatisfaction, of course, it's still there. Let me name you a couple of the big themes, the big problems in the Netherlands. First of all, the politicians who are now seated and will go on, most of them, they will face some inquiries in Parliament. Then we talk about the child care support scandal. There was some ethnic profiling in trying to get control of who gets the support. This ethnic profiling became a huge scandal. Another big inquiry coming up, that is the gas drilling damage in the north of the Netherlands. A lot of people suffered from years and years of gas drilling, how to solve the problems of these people. I only name 2. And then there is one really big theme, that is the housing shortage, especially social housing shortage. A lot of young starters who cannot afford to buy a new house, where should they live? There is not enough housing. Then the same group of young people, well educated, sometimes they go for a flex job. Well, they go for a flex job, they are forced to get into a flex job. What are their rights? What are their conditions? A lot of worries there. And then, of course, the big issue, and then it is European almost, migration and how to get, with the Netherlands and with the whole of Europe, out of the economic crisis because of Corona. What are now the options of Prime Minister Rutte? Because he will continue, that is for sure, or we will see another big surprise that he maybe gives the leading role to Sigrid Kaag, but I don't think so. His options are simple. He can continue with the government he had, so that is a centrum-right government with Christian parties. The 4 can still go on. But then again, Sigrid Kaag of the Progressive Liberals will want a change. She will want a translation of what the voters gave her, and that is a liberal, more progressive policy. So she will try to get on board, for example, the classic Labour Party, PvdA. So then you have the VVD, Rutte, Liberal, D66 of Kaag, and still this big Christian party, CDA, they lost, plus the traditional Labour. And maybe a real surprise would be, and they will have enough votes, that they don't ask the classic Labour Party, but they ask for Volt, this pan-European newcomer with 3 seats on board, and that would be a very pro-European message, of course. The question is, will Prime Minister Mark Rutte like that? About the fights, the internal fights in this coalition the coming weeks, months, you will hear enough. Let me tell you, between D66 and VVD, there are the big potential clashes. And that is, in general, will it be more and more a pro-European government? Will finally Rutte admit that he needs European Union, that he will mention back home what he gets and what kind of deals he makes in Brussels? Will he be honest about that? That is the most important thing. I'll go to just a couple of pictures of the players. I hope this works. Like this. Sorry. Sorry for that. Of course, Prime Minister Mark Rutte. When Merkel leaves the theater, he will be, together with the Hungarian Prime Minister Orbán, the longest sitting Prime Minister in Europe. He is well respected. They call him Teflon Mark. He never gets burned. That's what it stands for. Teflon Mark. He laughs off everything, and famous for his remarks like, when you want a vision, go to the eye doctor. He's leading the party for the entrepreneurs. And then, of course, the Christian Democrats, they lost, but they will still be on board. That is a more moderate Christian party of churchgoers. They support small, medium-sized entrepreneurs, also farmers. The party is really divided. We will come back to that later. And then, of course, the big winner, Sigrid Kaag, leader of D66, progressive liberal. Some issues on the left, some issues on the right. She is a cosmopolitan. She had a fantastic international career. She only came back to the Netherlands 4 years ago. She didn't even know all the famous television shows. People had to learn her. People were afraid that she was too stiff upper lip, too arrogant, but she proved to be a tough cookie. And then you've got Christian Union, always on board. They were on board the last 4 years. Maybe they will be again. That is a very loyal coalition partner, Christian party. Of course, you know Geert Wilders, anti-migration, anti-European Union, right in these issues, on social issues on the left. And maybe to end up, because we don't have enough time, I'm afraid, we will discuss these persons later. And here you've got, of course, Thierry Baudet, very controversial man, a maverick, eloquent, dangerously eloquent, people say. He is the man who resists the lockdown. He wants the Netherlands to go back to the 50s. A man of conflict, scandals, internal scandals about anti-Semitic, racist apps in the app group, but a player. And he has now, from 2 to 8, a big win. That's it for now, and a lot of issues we will discuss later.
Yes, that's correct. Thanks for those interesting facts. We will go now a bit more into detail, Tijn, thanks.
Yep.
But also we would love to have your questions. So please send us an email. Either you send an email on streamline@lv-brussels.hessen.de, streamline@lv-brussels.hessen.de, or you give us a call with all your questions on +32 472 030181. I'll repeat that, +32 472 030181. So, Tijn, thanks for all these insights. Let's start with the winner. Let's talk about Rutte first, someone everybody in the European bubble also knows well, but from a domestic point of view, we heard that he's Teflon Mark. Another name is Mr. Nobody, referring that he's...
Mr. No.
Yeah, so referring so that he's able to talk to everybody and not really has a strong will, so he's able to do coalitions with kind of everybody. He had various coalitions in the last 3 cabinets. He had to step back in January because of a big scandal you mentioned already, but he got nearly out of it without a scratch. Is that just because he's a good corona crisis manager, or why do people trust him so much?
In the campaign, he was aware, of course, of the outrage about the scandals, and he chose very clever for campaigning as the Corona Prime Minister. And that is a bit strange, because if you look at the track record of his cabinet in handling the Corona crisis, it went from there to there, and then masks were stupid, and then suddenly masks were an obligation for everyone. The evening clock in Belgium, we had an evening clock already. Nonsense, said his government, and then suddenly they had an evening clock. So, although it was a right choice of him, because he knew there was a bonus to get, you know, people in crisis, they tend to well, to look at what they already have. Let's keep it that way. So even in this calculation, he showed he is a champion in pragmatism. He knows exactly how the political game is played. But then still again, there are a lot of questions because there are on the traditional left side people who were not minister anymore, but in the past were a minister and involved in this scandal with the child support. They even stepped down. And he, with his cabinet now, no one stepped down. He made some excuses, of course. He went to talk with victims of this scandal, and there, again, he's clever. He is the nice guy, you know. He's laughing. There are a lot of people who hate him for this, but there are still more people who love him for this.
He's kind of the eternal bachelor who just lives for his work. Is there also probably a fear of change?
Well, again, in this corona crisis, I think. But on the other hand, I mean, in the past, we have seen a lot of changes from a liberal government to a socialist government back, and so it's not really very Dutch. But maybe that's my mistake, because in my days as a student, it went more like this. But now people are, as I mentioned, the Dutch show their real liberal face. So Mark Rutte is still their champion.
But if you speak about liberal, and you also mentioned the Avondklok, what surprised us in Germany were the huge riots, the brutalism, the young men disguised, really crashing into cities 4 nights in a row. Even last Sunday in The Hague, huge protests, police. So did you expect those riots? Because this is something that we don't associate. We would associate this more with the French, not so much with the Dutch.
I'm more and more I'm not surprised by this. Let's first mention that this is not the majority you see, you know. There was a lot of media attention for these riots, and you went to the Netherlands yourself to cover the elections, and you have seen it yourself that the big majority, a huge majority of the Dutch people just follow the rules. Why it didn't have that much effect on the results, the riots you saw, you would have expected an outrage and an elite, anti-status vote. No, because the riots on the streets were too much by the majority related to parties like Thierry Baudet's Forum, and still, although he's growing, for the majority of the Dutch people, he's going too far. This is a too big experiment, too dangerously. So I think, although it gives another picture of a country in stress, it is too much media attention, and after all, the majority want peace.
And the media seems to be liberal, so either like conservative liberal for the VVD, for Rutte, or the big winner, as you mentioned,
shifting to a more conservative,
to more social liberal, progressive, D66, which is known that they fought for your very liberal euthanasia law, and also for marriage for everybody. So these were their 2 big topics in the past. Dutch people have a very high average income, 4th place in the EU after Denmark, Luxembourg, and Ireland. But still, in all debates, apart from Corona, the social inequality was one of the biggest issues. Housing, you mentioned housing before. So do we see a shift to the left overall?
That is the big question, really, because the wealth gap is growing incredibly, and not to forget all these flex workers who are most of them high educated. They also are in trouble. So now comes the big question, and that is a huge task for Kaag, because the VVD, the liberals, they are the party of the entrepreneurs. That's safe, and they are growing a little. Now, Kaag, also a liberal party, but her progressive task, she has to take even more serious because she ate up the Greens and the lefts, and she cannot say to them, well, thanks a lot, bye-bye, I'm going to follow the same agenda as D66 always had, liberal, progressive liberal. No, she has to take account of another audience she has to serve. More socialist, more traditional socialist, more Greens. So, and she is that type of woman that will not shy away or walk away from that task. That is the estimation of all the analysts. So here, when the formation comes, lies the biggest problems, because she has to turn this new government, maybe with the same parties, to a real more social liberal direction.
So, as you said, she kind of more or less cannibalized the lefts and the Greens. Both left and Green nearly lost half of their seats. Yeah. But do you think it's possible that she takes them under her wing and tries to get those two small parties into the coalition?
There is a small chance. When she is not satisfied enough in the formation the coming weeks with Rutte, well, listening more to a social liberal, social green cry out, then she will ask for example, the PvdA, the traditional Labour Party, to join. That's something we will see. That will be a signal of how things behind the curtains of this formation will go. But I think she, at the end, she doesn't have to, by the numbers, but I can imagine quite well that you will see a shift towards this situation that finally back on board, the PvdA will come back, the socialist.
So, so this is the left, but let's talk about the Greens also, because they are the biggest kind of losers. They really lost half of their seats, even though our impression from a German perspective is that there are a lot of green inventions and ideas coming from the Netherlands, even some we don't like and are impossible in Germany. For 1 year now, you have a speed limit of 100 on all highways. 100, that's impossible in Germany. But still we have the idea that you are a very green country, even struggling with probably water levels rising, you have a problem anyways. Why are people not, well, are people not aware? Do they don't care? Why are the Greens not successful, even though they are everywhere else in Europe?
The green voice in the Netherlands is very loud, absolutely. But in policy, it's still lacking behind a lot. Maybe you've got this nice green image of the Netherlands, but if you compare it to the EU average on all kinds of goals, we should strive for to fight the climate crisis. Netherlands is lacking behind. We had this stikstof drama. What is it? Yeah, difficult, but we've got this. Yeah, it is related to this huge livestock we have, one of the highest livestocks in Europe. For example, Kaag, with her progressive liberals, want to halve it.
Yes.
VVD doesn't want it. But there you will see a big fight. And then, you're right, you would have expected the Greens to profit from this consciousness that is growing among young voters, especially maybe. But there you've got a typical awful problem. He made, Jesse Klaver is his name, young guy, he made a mistake 4 years ago. He left at the last moment the coalition formation talks. People were really angry with him, and also his voters were disappointed. Why didn't you take responsibility then? That's one mistake. On the other hand, the green message is also cannibalized by the other parties. So yeah, he's not the only one anymore. And the third problem is, he is typical the guy who needs a stage, who needs theaters to act with his audience. And now he was on an online Corona campaigning strategy, and it didn't work.
So overall, we see a shift to the left. The Greens are nearly not there anymore, but then you also said there is a big win for the right-wing parties. We also have a question on that. from Martin Hein, and he wants to know how do you explain that a country that is itself calls very liberal, how is it possible that still the country kind of tends to the right? How do you explain that?
First of all, maybe liberal and right in the Netherlands, for us, liberal is not like in America, for example, or in the UK, left. Liberal is right. So that's a short, stupid answer, but it is in these words we are using. But maybe another answer maybe to your question, and maybe that is behind your question, that there is still this image of this very socialist country, the Netherlands, very progressive, a lot of tolerance towards all kinds of issues you mentioned already, like euthanasia, or but this is a bit from the 70s already, and we had this 90s progressive wave of purple governments, they were called, but that took 8 years, and since then it's back to the more conservative, centrum-right, liberal, as we call it, policy. I hope that is answering your question.
Okay, thanks. Then the rights. You were mentioning Thierry Baudet. And what we know about Thierry Baudet is that he's a crazy guy who's posing nearly naked on a piano or at a pool. And now he is, he's very right-wing, even more than Wilders. But also he is completely against all those corona measures. Is that something that helped him? So are people probably not that right, but they are against the corona measures?
At the end, he won with that message. We've seen the rise of Thierry Baudet the last couple of years with astonishment. He is, as I said, dangerously eloquent. He's a very intelligent guy. He's attractive, and in a very wide, surprisingly range, because he's attractive for some professors in law, and on the other side of the spectrum, he's attractive for the people on the street who don't believe in vaccination, for example, the virus truth movement. But then there were all these scandals inside with these anti-Semitic Semitic and racist apps in the app groups. The party imploded, and then he was there with his closest friend again, and then he made the right choice, you can say. He started campaigning with unlocking the Netherlands back to a free country. That is very attractive, and the people who voted for him still know the old message that was under, and that is sort of a melancholy to the, sorry to say, but to sort of mono-ethnic, nice Netherlands of the 50s.
There is a slight shift to the left. The Greens are struggling. The right is strong, so it's divided. It will be difficult to form a coalition. Rutte will need at least 3 other parties, probably 4. New to the parliament, and you mentioned also probably possible for the coalition, is Volt, the European youth. So a good way to focus on Europe now. The Netherlands always had a very strong relationship with Great Britain. So after Brexit, there were even some calls for an exit. But can we say, so this is completely off the table now because of all those pro-European strong voices, D66 second biggest, Volt also in the parliament, and other parties that still say they're very pro-European?
Euro-bashing will continue, of course, in this populist right corner. That is their core business, almost. But no, there will be more pro-European Union tone, that's for sure. Rutte has always been pro-European Union, but he never took that message back home. So he went to Brussels. He was there, one of the most respected, almost European Union leaders, longest sitting prime ministers. But then back in the Netherlands, he was always cautious and shying away and saying like, I will take care that we don't pay too much to Brussels. And but that was not for real.
I have a question. We got questions on that a lot. Okay. So before we go more into depth, for instance, one question is from Pascal Albrechtskirchinger, and he's asking, on the long run, which will be more valid, the pro-European centralistic voices, or probably will the Europe skeptic voices rise again?
So no, absolutely the pro-European. I wouldn't have said that 4 years ago. But with Volt, only small, but then it is a signal. And D66 in the winning mood. And still, you know, these green left parties also pro-European Union, except the Socialist Party, SP, they are very skeptical. But there is, in the opposition now, green left, pro-European Union. In the government, the pro-European Kaag of D66 will get Rutte more and more on board of a pro-European message. So no. Well, I don't know if you're a Euro lover, but when you are, good news.
So after this, you mentioned already Rutte is now, when Angela Merkel will leave in September. So Rutte and Orban, they will be the two that have the longest period in the European Union. So, enemies. Well, also, yes, we all remember Orban saying like in the right corner, well, in the red corner and in the blue corner. Yeah, but still, is that, will the Netherlands have a more substantial and a bigger voice in the European Union?
They already have. They are the small, the biggest of the small countries, you could say. But it is already for a couple of years that the Netherlands is trying to find a new position, because it was always nicely between Merkel, Berlin, and London. We could always shy away behind London when they were putting the handbrake when Macron and Merkel went too far or too federalistic. So there was a nice position, but now the Netherlands have to choose another position, because Rutte is not a man who can get along with the Spanish, Italian, French, European project lovers. He still sees the EU as this nice European internal market. But then comes again Sigrid Kaag with all her international experience. She knows better how to deal with the world. So
we have a question there from Dr. Kurt Geisert. He wants to know whether the Netherlands will still be, well, in the lead of the Frugal Four, or, yeah, so will the Netherlands still be the ones saying, like, don't spend our money?
That depends really on the formation. If the CDA minister, the CDA will deliver again the Minister of Finance, that is, for example, Wopke Hoekstra, one of the strong voices in this frugal discussion, more than Rutte. Yes, then the Netherlands or Rutte will try to be in that group, but again, less outspoken, less frugal. He knows now how the game is played, and he knows now that the recovery fund is there, and maybe the next discussion will be about a permanent recovery fund, a continuation of this recovery fund. He will again try to stand on the brake, try to slow it down. But what happened in the summer when this recovery fund came there, I think it has been a big wake-up call for Rutte and for the Dutch politics, especially now that the Netherlands themselves realize how deep the economic crisis is and will be.
So you think that, well, Rutte says he's on the phone with Angela Merkel every Sunday.
Yeah.
Merkel is not saying that this is correct, but she doesn't say anything at all. So, but he says we are chatting every Sunday. So we have big elections coming up. Where do you think? So for the Frugals, Rutte is also very close with Austria. So now, what do you think? Where is he searching for his luck? Still big orientation on who's succeeding Merkel, or where is he looking for a position?
Yeah, his position must be now, for the first time maybe in his life, between Paris and Berlin, taking into account that the Merkel line will be continued in Berlin. That's a question for you and for the German voters. But no, he has to shift from this position with a sort of Hanseliga frugal color from outside, but then, yeah, more closer to Berlin. Now he has to choose between Berlin and Paris. I think he has to learn more about French politics and maybe accept that coming back to this discussion on the recovery fund is useless. I mean, it's there. He can only, again, slow it down a little for a next package, but I think he has to go along.
Thank you very much, Tijn. This insight, that was quite interesting. We will see how it goes along. First, how the coalition will be built, how many parties will be in the coalition out of 17. This is amazing for Germans. And also for this idea of where the Netherlands within the EU might tend to. We will now try to make a connection with our Secretary for Europe, Mark Weinmeister, again. So, and I hope we can hear you now.
I hope so too. Ja, ganz herzlichen Dank, dass ich nochmal die Möglichkeit habe, jetzt hier reinzukommen in diese Veranstaltung, weil am Anfang die Tonprobleme wirklich da waren. Aber das haben wir, glaube ich, jetzt behoben. Und ich möchte mich wenigstens nochmal ganz herzlich bedanken. Sowohl bei unserem Gast.
In the meantime, I would like to thank our guest very cordially. You have set out what the situation subsequent to the election is. I've learned a lot. I now know what a Teflon prime minister is. I hope that things are going ahead very swiftly this time. And you were asked about the European role of Mark Rutte during the next year, when our Chancellor Angela Merkel is going to leave us in September, and when Mark Rutte is going to be the Prime Minister. It, of course, is going to be exciting to see the position of the ministers of northern countries. Thank you very much indeed for your insights, for your analysis of the Dutch election results. And I'm looking forward to meeting you personally in Brussels soon. That would be my wish. And if the vaccination goes forward, we should be able to realize that soon. Thank you to both of you concerning the elections in Europe. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Weinmeister. We all hope to meet personally despite Corona. We haven't reached that stage yet. Thank you for your interest, for following us. I would like to indicate the following. Thank you very much indeed, also in the name of the representation of Hesse to the European Union, who hosted the event. There will be 2 further events here in the representation of Hesse. On the one hand, on the 24th of March, we are going to talk about the German Booker Prize in the evening. There will be a lecture by Jackie Tomei and Anna Weber. And in the series, in the framework of the series concerning the European elections, we're going to talk about elections in Bulgaria on the 6th of April at noon. Thank you very much indeed for your interest.